There's a lot to talk about, like who, what, why, when, where, how, all of that stuff. What's going on with the Jaguars and why are the fans back in such a familiar place, even after having a winning record? I'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. We are free to subscribe to on our YouTube page as well. That is Locked On Jaguars. Make sure when you get there, you hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, wherever you listen to your podcast, if you're at work or riding around in your car, wherever you do that, make sure you tap in every single day so that you do not miss an episode. Today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Terms and conditions apply. Also want to let you know, if you're an everydayer, I see you and I appreciate you. And thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars. And if you want to be an everydayer, just join us here every single day. All right. So it's going to feel like a buffet here. It's going to feel like we're all over the place a little bit because organically we are. Jaguar fans are all over the place right now because they're trying to figure out what the hell happened, right? I'm going to talk about things you don't see that really, really do matter, right? You don't actually see them happening, but what you do end up seeing is because of a lot of those things that you don't see. We'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about fantasy fandom too. Lots of folks want to make a lot of moves with this team like it's fantasy football, but without knowing the first thing that I just mentioned, you start to understand that things really don't work the way you think that they do when it comes to player procurement and adding people. Also, why Jag fans are too familiar with this feeling. What feeling am I talking about? The one of uncertainty, of knowing that there's a problem, but not knowing what exactly it is. You think you know what it is, but probably not that. And I'm right there with you. It's probably not that. So things that you don't see that matter. I don't know this firsthand when it comes to football at that level because I didn't play, didn't coach. Okay. I've covered for like 16 years. By the way, I need to change the bio. It's probably close to 20 years by now. Um, but I do talk to a lot of people and they kind of smile at me and go, and if you're not watching on YouTube, I understand, but it's a smile almost as if like, man, you have no clue what you're there, but you're not quite there because there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you don't know. The only thing I can sort of attach this to for me personally are the things that I am an expert at, right? And there are a couple of them. I ain't saying I'm the best, but what I am saying is each and everything that I've ever done that required a lot of people and it required a lot of teamwork to get a mission done. There was always things that were involved in that the average person has no clue about. Even like right now, I don't care what your job is. You know, if you're, let's just say you're a truck driver over the road, I have no idea what that process is. But me, I can sit here and just talk about how I think this guy drives better than the other guy without actually knowing what it is that they do. What's the difference between a flatbed driver and a guy that's pulling has a can, or a guy driving some other kind of vehicle? You know, it's anything that someone else does on a daily basis that is highly criticized and highly watched by people that don't do it. It could absolutely probably infuriate me sometimes, and it does really. People do it when they talk about podcasts. You think that all of them are universal. You think sitting behind a microphone and just talking with graphics and then posting it is universally the same, then you have something, you're missing something. And the same thing goes about football. The only thing that we can go on is demonstrated performance, is what we see. And when you look at what you see and you don't like it, and the Jaguar fans did not like what they saw down the stretch. And a lot of real smart football fans, even when they were 8-3, they didn't like what they saw. But we were winning. When you look at it and say, you try to identify what the problem is. And it is so frustrating, especially if you've had a narrative going the whole time where you thought this one thing was the issue, and it probably isn't. But nobody can tell you that. And even after you're told, you still hold on to it because that's what you've been hanging on to. And the reason why you do that is because you really don't know. So you're going to hold on to anything and grasp on to anything that you think might be the problem. For a lot of people, the problem this year was Press Taylor. It wasn't for me. Now, because of the world we live in now, by me saying that, that means that folks will go, you're a Press Taylor fan. No, I'm not. I'm just not quick to attach myself to groupthink as you know, as it pertains to what I actually believe the problem and the issues were with this team. I've said all along that Press was doing exactly what he was taught and what he was told and what was being approved. So if that's the case, if I don't like what I'm seeing from Press, then I don't like what I'm seeing from his boss, which is Doug Peterson. I have liked what I have seen from Doug Peterson in the past. And there have been moments where I have seen things that I like from Doug Peterson. So what would make me change without knowing the process behind it? And that's what I always tell people. You got to think a little bit deeper. And sometimes I'm too much of a deep thinker. But this is why I keep going back to Trent Baalke. I think no matter how they say that they get along, no matter how they do and say all of those things, there has to be a little bit of disconnect there. And even if it's not a working relationship type disconnect, it could be that he's just not giving this man what he needs in order to succeed. And what the whole process is like, how does he go about it? What do you think? Did he try to get players? Did he make phone calls to guys and just guys that you thought the Jaguars should have gotten and they just didn't want to come here? And he wasn't a good enough salesman. There are a lot of questions that lead you to thinking that these problems with this team are bigger than just firing an offense or a defense coordinator. I seem to think they are. And this is why I'm documented as saying that all the way back in September and October. Maybe October, probably not September. September everything was still all fresh and everybody was all happy. So you don't want to get kind of screw that up because nobody's going to pay attention to you. But I'm sure at some point in late October, if I look back chronologically at some of these things that I said, that I was just shocked. I know it goes back to last offseason, at least when I said, listen, I can't believe they stood pat. There you go, right there. I spoke on it yesterday, and I'm going to speak on it again today. I didn't forget that I said those things. I cannot believe that they sat there and stood pat. Did I think the players are good enough? Sure. But you don't have that mentality permeating throughout the entire organization and the whole city. I thought it was a mistake from the very beginning because something about this business of demonstrated performance is fueled by competition. It's fueled by fear of losing your job. Players say it all the time. You took all of that away. What motivation did they have to do anything differently or try to? You basically told them we're running it back with the same team, so we're going to get the same result, and you actually did in a 9-18. Things that you don't see. Just that little bit of mustard seed of comfort has now made the entire organization uncomfortable, and fans are uncomfortable. And they should be. in a nutshell, whatever mojo Trent Baalke is dishing out, I don't think it's going to work. It's not going to work. Because now you got to go in there and tell those dudes. Now you go in there acting like Captain Ahab or somebody, and you go in there acting crazy and coming up with all these rules. And you probably should have more discipline, and you probably should make people feel more fearful of losing their job. But now you're doing it to the same people that you let go to Club Med, and now I don't believe that they believe you, and they're not going to believe you. And that's a problem. That's why they need to change. I'm going to tell you why fans in the fantasy fandom of adding players and subtracting players, even media people, we do it. I'm going to tell you why some of that stuff needs to stop if you really want to have some sanity while you're watching football. I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man. Today is the day for me to tell you about LinkedIn Talent Solutions. LinkedIn. That's right. If you have a small business or a business period, it's the start of the new year, and you're asking yourself the same question, what's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level? Ooh, I wish the Jaguars thought about that. That's why you have LinkedIn Jobs, and they've created tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I have used LinkedIn myself, and I'm telling you, it absolutely rocks. Segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, having these conversations that we're going to be having for a while now, before we start evaluating Senior Bowl, before we get to the Combine, before we get to free agency, all of those things that are coming up in the regular season. I know you're saying which games are still being played, and not by us, it ain't. So that's why we are doing what we are real adept at doing, and that is focusing on the offseason, because outside of last season, that's exactly what we used to do all the time when the regular season ended. And we're right back there again. Fantasy fandom is what I call it. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is I used to always get mad at those people that used to say that fantasy football sucked. The folks that didn't like it because they said it's not real, and I don't know how y'all do that and pay attention to the game for real and all of this stuff. And I'm like, dude, it's fantasy football. You separate the two. However, there's a growing sentiment or a growing feeling amongst me and a few other people that I talk to when it comes to having to interact with people about what you see and what you don't see in your Jacksonville Jaguars. There's a lot of people that take the logic of fantasy football and apply it to real stuff. And it infuriates me. It upsets me a lot, is because it's not that easy. I just said that there are a lot of things and a lot of processes that you don't see that really, really do matter for a football team. Most of it we don't see. You can kind of get a hint of it when you're around a building, or when you're interviewing people. You can feel it just a little bit, but it all looks alike. It all looks alike on the surface, and what you're going to see when you go to practice. Every time I've gone to Jaguar practice, with the exception of like 2013 and 2014, and maybe 2015, those teams all looked alike to me. Those three teams I just mentioned, I knew they weren't going to be very good at all, because they didn't look very good. And used to have those joint practices where you could see them side by side with another team. But for the most part, it always looks the same. It always looks like guys are out, are saying the right things, doing the right things, going through the same motions, whether it's through mini camps or through training camps and all of that stuff. But there's stuff behind the scenes that you don't know about, like who stands on the table for who. What is a guy being taught? What kind of plan of development do they have for a player? What is the strength and conditioning program like? What are they teaching in these meetings? Are guys asleep? How are guys paying attention? That's why I say fantasy fandom doesn't really matter, because if the one thing that you want to have is you want to have players that all fit. It's one thing to just say, okay, he can play, bring him here. It doesn't work that way. What about his workflow? What about how he moves around in the building? We love to talk about culture when it comes to college, and I think the word culture is a little bit weird because it's not universal, right? I mean, the culture has to fit the people. The people have to fit. This is this big understanding. What I'm trying to say is when you watch these games, and people are saying it's bad football. 5 out of 6 games were bad. I don't think any game is bad. If one team is dominating another, you know what that means to me? That means that team, you're seeing their process, you're seeing their talent, you're seeing their attitude all work together. Detroit, perfect example. The way Dan Campbell talks is the way that those guys walk, the way that they play. Dan Campbell, if you did an interview with Amon-Ra St. Brown and you just used Dan Campbell's voice on top of it, it would seem like the same person. There's just a mentality. The demonstrated performance on the field tells you what is going on off the field more than anything. So all of that loosey-goosey stuff with the football from Trevor, all of the throwing sideways and offensive linemen jumping off sides and guys not in their gaps on defense, all of that stuff. We can just sit here all day and say, well, we need player X to come in and do this. Or we need player Y to come in here and do this. You know what I get the feeling? I get the feeling if you bring player X or player Y into the same situation where the same things are being done behind the scenes, it's going to get the same result. It'll just look differently. Case in point, they bring in Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's a much better player than Marvin Jones. It looked the same. It didn't look much differently. Because you know what didn't change? Whatever they got going on over there on a daily basis. 9-8 when no one expects it, it's celebrated. 9-8 when you expect more, it's poo-pooed. That's just the way it goes. And you can take any fantasy player or you can take any guy from another good team and put him in here, and it's probably going to be the same situation because they have to change what goes on in the building. I'm just trying to make people go a little bit deeper in their thoughts about what it's going to take to fix this team. Y'all can talk about players all you want to, man. I'm telling you, if they don't change something with the way that they do their business over there, this is going to keep happening over and over again. And it might go all the way up to the owner, Shad Khan. This ain't about, like on fantasy football, you just bench a guy and put another guy in. Those computers don't have feelings. That's different. I have said over and over again, what you see on demonstrated performance is a result of what they allow, what they teach, and it is about the attitude that goes on. When you see a team that plays like they don't care during the week either. When you see a team show up but not show up, then they did the same thing when they went and prepared all week at work. They just went in and showed up without showing up. So, yeah, can people change that? Sure. But guess what happens when you bring in a player who's great, who stands up and speaks up against a lot of stuff like that? He's labeled as a cancer, like the one you got rid of when he played corner here. And nobody wants to pay attention to and hear that. This ain't fantasy football, man. They got some deep-rooted stuff that you don't see going on. And it's not like it's bad. Ain't nobody tying nobody up in like misery or something. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just they're missing the boat. They're missing the boat on something. That's why I always go, people talk about Shad Khan needs to sell the team. Well, he ain't, okay? And you know what? I criticize the football operations, folks. The only thing I criticize Shad for is being slow to fire people. But I criticize, when we're talking about what's going on, I criticize the football operation folks on that team right there. It's not fantasy football. It's actually real football. When you go over there, you see real people, real bodies, folks that need to be coached a certain way, leadership, every single thing matters. And you think it's going on until you see a team on the field that plays the way that they played down the stretch in the second half of the season. And then some of the things that you would hear him say, they want to get out of town and all of this stuff. We need to get out of Jacksonville. And the defense, the fans were too loud when we were on defense. We couldn't communicate. All of that crap. That's exactly what it is. And it starts with the people that allow it to happen. I'll give you a little bit more of that and tell you why this is a too familiar feeling for fans and why they're experts at feeling exactly and managing what they are managing right now, and why it's bad because they thought it was over. They thought it was over. And whether you're 4-13 or 9-8, not having answers sucks. I'll give you more about this in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man. It is time for me to let you guys know about FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the absolute truth, and you better know it. Just because the regular season is over with, it does not mean that it's over with for you in FanDuel, because it absolutely is not. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right. When you place a $5 bet with FanDuel, all you got to do, man, is tap in and look at, watch, and read the information every single day. And guess what? You can absolutely win you some Skrilla. Live, same game parlays are the best. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an absolute layup. I know that's basketball. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Have to let you know also about Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk for just a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. And that's pretty scary. I can't imagine more helpless feelings than if you need medication for, like, for instance, my grandson. It gets sick, and the supply chain issue keeps them from having life-saving medication. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial infections, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, and skin infections. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to prepare than today. So go to jasemedical.com and use the offer code locked on to get $20 off your order. All right, running down here, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. Things you don't see that matter a whole bunch. Fantasy fandom, just thinking that you can just take bodies and plug them in without factoring in the, I wouldn't say culture, but the things that are allowed in the building, the things that aren't allowed in the building. And obviously, this isn't about whether or not people are nice or not, okay? This is not that. You know, I was treated very well this season in the facility about everybody. This ain't got nothing to do with that, okay? It has something to do with whether or not they're the right people for the job and whether or not they're competent. You can be mean to me and win. You can make me a little uncomfortable and win. I take some of that New England stuff because it makes the fans happy. It makes the fans happy. Ain't no media person going to be out here woe is me and about having access to the team and all of that stuff. No, fans don't want to hear that, especially if they're winning. But the fans right now, the Jaguar fans, are in a very, very familiar place for the wrong reason, and that is navigating the offseason, trying to figure out their own personal emotions about what happened, trying to actually figure out what's wrong with the team, arguing with people online about what's the matter with the team, refusing to believe anything that has to do with Trevor needing to get a little bit better, and I get it. Not wanting to change your opinion based on one season. You want to blame everything around the guy that you believe is the one that's going to take this franchise to another level. And I agree with it. But there was something that I said a long time ago. I said, when they get him, they need to make sure that they insulate him and do every single thing that they can to make sure he has the best chance to be successful. That doesn't mean burdening him down and asking him questions about the job that other people are supposed to be doing. And I think that that's what's going on right now. And I think some of the culprits with that are fans. Fans want just give Trevor whatever he wants, do whatever, whatever Trevor wants, and go talk to Trevor. Media friend of mine, Brett, he basically says whatever he wants. I just think that if you're me and you come, if I'm in that situation and you come to me and say, what do you think we need to do? I'll be like, what are you saying? You don't know what you need to be doing? Why are you asking me? That's how I would feel. I'm going to do my job, man. It's hard being a quarterback in the National Football League. I want to watch tape. I want to be with my friends. I'll kiss babies in the community and all of that, and I'll have nice, hard conversations with my teammates, but I just don't want to have to be the GM too. I just heard somebody the other day say that Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time, but Bill Belichick, the GM, got Bill Belichick, the coach, run out of town because you can't do both. Well, if you can't coach in GM, how in the hell can you quarterback in GM too? And I know most people, when they say stuff like that, they go, that's not really what we mean. We just mean, hey, man, we just need him to say, can you fortify the interior of the offensive line and get me a tall receiver with more catch radius? All right, so let me just tell you something. If you got to ask Trevor Lawrence, does he need Luke Fortner to be better or be replaced? Or would it help him if he had a taller wide receiver helping him with catch radius? Then you probably don't need to be a general manager. Because that's about the extent of what Trevor Lawrence is going to tell you. Of course, if you ask him about T. Higgins, hey, man, would you like to have T? You think you should go after? What kind of person is he? You think you can convince him to come here? That's different. But asking him obvious questions and he gives you obvious answers, it just doesn't make sense. So that's why when fans do that, when they say, well, this is what I think should happen, and I'm like, yeah, you're back where you used to be, and that is, and you're not being logical. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But they're real familiar with this, and the reason why they're familiar with it is because they don't know what else to do. They have no more answers, man. They thought this was over. That's why stuff like that comes up. That's why they take a fantasy football approach to it, because they don't understand the process of what goes on every single day. And I don't either, because I don't do it every day. But can you imagine something that you do that's very, very important, and then have someone who doesn't do it and it's like telling somebody, it's like somebody that doesn't have kids telling people how to raise kids. It would drive you absolutely crazy, because it removes all context from everything, right? So from my perspective, Jag fans are right back to coming up with these wild scenarios and all of these different things, because it's all about grief management. A grief that they shouldn't even have right now, because people aren't doing their job. I don't need Trent Baalke to ask Trevor Lawrence what to do. I need Trent Baalke to do it or be gone and get somebody else in here to do his job so Trevor can focus on just his. See, this is the thing that I keep talking about a process. What is the one thing you often heard from Bill Belichick? Do your job. If you do your job, there is no speculating on whether or not you're the reason something's going wrong, because it's going to be clear who we need to point the finger to or point the finger at. Everybody else is doing their job and you're not doing this, they're going to point the finger at you. They're going to look at you and be like, come on, you can. But right now, nobody knows what's wrong with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and nobody knows who's supposed to be doing what. And nobody knows who's to blame for what. Everybody is back in self-preservation mode, like CYA. And fans are doing the same thing. Fans don't know exactly what the problem is. So here comes all of these wild scenarios about what has to happen. Cliches. Give Trevor whatever he wants. No, you don't give him whatever he wants. He probably doesn't even know what he needs to win in the National Football League. He needs to be taught. He's a young player. Teach him. We're going around and around and around in circles because there's a whole bunch of things that matter that you don't see that I think people are off about. There's this thing I said a long time ago about burning the onions. If you burn the onions, you might as well start over. If you burn your roux while you're cooking gumbo, you might as well start over. There's no way you can overcome a bad process. There's no way you can overcome that kind of stuff. And all of these grenades that are coming in, these salvos and these sound bites that make things like podcasts sound good. Well, to me, that's not going to help either. All they're doing is continuing to confuse people. The Jags just need to get their act together. They need to get their act together. And the more you watch playoff football, when you see these dominant teams, you realize how far off they are from actually getting their act together and doing it. I can tell you who has their act together. That's Locked On, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So starting tomorrow, I'm going to finally tell you my list of guys. Even though I don't know who the damn defensive coordinator is, I am still going to go ahead and start stabbing away a little bit at what I think has to happen on the roster. And I'll try to factor in some of the stuff that I even criticized other people for today and use that to help me tell you guys, because everyone keeps asking me, who do they need to go after? Okay, this is what I would do if it was me. I'm going to do all of that for you tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars. Until then, you guys take care of each other. And remember, it's going to get better, man. It has to. We'll see you next time.